Hey guys, so I want to come on here and talk to you guys about misrepresented tarot cards. Now these are the cards that are seen as bad or darker cards. Someone gave me a great idea on a comment and I wanted to go ahead and do this video. So we're going to start with the major arcana because there are a couple cards in the major arcana. When you get them during a reading, you may have that like, oh shit moment. Like, is this bad? Is this terrible? What is about to come into my life? Is it the bad omen? You know, there's just that dread, that's that fear. So we're going to start with the major arcana. Now, I want you guys to keep in mind that there are no good or bad cards in tarot. There's not. There is positive and negative cards, and there are times where negative promotes good and positive promotes negative. So, you have to really change your way of thinking first off. You have to change your way of thinking about the cards in general. But the very first card that a lot of people are just like, oh no, why is this card coming up for me? And that is the Death card. And at first glance, yeah, it looks scary. As humans, we're wired to be afraid of death. We're wired. If you ask anyone if they think about death, we do think about it constantly. We think about leaving life constantly, okay? And we get so caught up in this that when the Death card comes up, what is the first thing someone says? Am I going to die? Is someone around me going to die? They think that. But that's not what the Death card represents. The Death card represents transition, closing one door, opening another. It represents putting the past behind you. It represents allowing your soul to transform, to allow yourself to transition from one phase to another phase, okay? It is not, this terrible thing. If you see the sun, this shows me that the sun is coming up after a period of darkness. Positivity is coming in after a period of darkness, okay? This represents changing your status, changing your direction. This represents, concluding unfinished business. This represents closing a chapter. Okay, a changing condition. This represents change. This represents transition, but this is not a bad card. Okay, if this comes up in your tarot reading, if you get a reading done, then this just tells the reader that, okay, you're finally ready to make a change. All right. The very next card that we have is the Hanged Man. For some people, when they see the Hanged Man, they may be like, oh no, the Hanged Man, like what's going to happen to me? Like, is something bad going to happen to me? And when I see the Hanged Man, you may have you may think originally, am I gonna hang? Like, am I gonna get myself in a fucked up situation? And for most of the part, that's not what the Hangman represents. It represents, allowing yourself to give up control. It represents allowing yourself to, really understand that sometimes you can't force things. The next card that we have, the Devil. This card, man, the concept of the devil. You guys know my thoughts on the concept of the devil to begin with. But this card, it's really, every time I've given a reading and I pull this card, I just hear, like, oh no, the devil. I'm going to be burning in the flames. I just, whenever I see this card come up for a client, and I see their look on their face when I tell them, it's quite humorous, actually, because the devil does not represent, going to hell, going into, it doesn't represent that. What the Devil card does represent, though, is the bondage that we get ourselves in. A lot of times we get ourselves in situations that we can get ourselves out if we want to, but deep down inside, we don't want to. This card represents giving in to our vices to a point where our vices start to control us, okay? This card represents ignorance, being ignorant of the things that are holding you back. It represents a sense of hopelessness, and maybe you're feeling hopeless in your direction, okay? But this card is really asking you, okay, what are you allowing to control you? Okay, this card represents forgetting about your spirituality. You may get this card and realize, damn, I haven't meditated in a fucking long time. I haven't prayed. I haven't thought about my spiritual side. That's what this card represents. If you see me looking over, it's because I got notes here. I got notes, boo. This represents, losing your independence. Losing your independence by something that you have allowed yourself to get caught up in. By being addicted and enslaved to something. A lot of times when this comes up, I immediately think addictions. Okay, this is submitting to somebody else. submitting to somebody else, overindulging in the things that you like to the point that it's causing you more harm than good. That's what the devil card represents. This does not represent, death, like the dying or that the devil in the Christian archetype, the devil. This is Baphomet, first off, and that's a pentagram, a reverse pentagram. So it's showing you how something good can be turned bad. But this is Baphomet. This is not the devil. But it's just like, and these people, you see them on the chains. If they wanted, they could release the chains, but they refuse to. Overindulging in our passions, allowing our lust to rule our lives. This is gluttony. This makes me think of, giving into things to a point that these things begin to control you. That is what the devil card represents. Now, the very next card. And I love this card. I'm learning to love this card. This is the Tower, my loves. The Tower. And what does the Tower represent? Okay, so first let's look at the card. You have these people falling out of a fucking tower. It looks like they're about to die, honestly. And there's this crown falling, like it's getting zapped by lightning. So this card represents sudden change, okay? This represents a sudden change, but it also represents, you see the crown being knocked off? It represents your ego getting stripped down. The ego getting stripped down. It does not represent you dying. It represents a situation falling apart. It represents, being surprised. Something's going to surprise you. A sudden change. Going through a crisis. It represents, being humbled. Something's going to happen. Lightning is going to strike and your ass is going to get humbled. That's what it represents. Okay? It represents, suffering a blow to the ego. Maybe you are at the top and something happens and boom, you're down. I see this all the time, with like the YouTubers that like James Charles, he was at the top and then something happened and boom, or so whatever celebrities. I see this with celebrities all the time. They get to the top heights and then something happens suddenly. Something happened and boom. This also realizes maybe you realize the truth. Maybe something happened, opened your eyes, seeing through people's bullshit, seeing, getting answers, seeing everything in a flash, visions. This is not always bad. Okay, this card is not welcomed by people who don't like change. This card is not welcomed by people who, who dig their heels in, like a Taurus, like myself, who digs their heels in and they don't want to admit change. This is not so this card for them, it may seem a little scary, but this represents the things that bubble up inside of us that we hold back, like anger, okay? And something does happen and it jolts us into action. So that's what the Tower represents. Now we're going to go into the minor arcana. And let's talk about these cards in the minor arcana that, they may, when you see them in a reading, you may be a little like, oh no. And the very first card that I have here is the Three of Swords. When the Three of Swords comes up, for a lot of people, you immediately think that your heart is about to be broken, that you're about, like something bad is going to happen, okay? And while this can represent heartbreak, while this can represent, feeling like while this can represent a romantic thing, this is not always a romantic thing. This does not always represent that you are going to be left or betrayed. This also represents, feeling isolated from people you love. This represents feeling lost in life. This is the mind, the swords, right? So your mind is fucking with your heart. You're feeling lost. You're feeling separated. Maybe you're far from home. This could come up if you're a student and you're living on campus far away from home and the Three of Swords comes up. It's because you're emotionally feeling hurt and lost. Okay? This could represent getting news that doesn't make you feel good. This could represent, having your feelings hurt. This represents so many things, but it's not a bad card. This is not a negative card, okay? Sometimes pain is a motivator. Sometimes when you're feeling lost is when you realize that you have to find your way back. This can represent betrayal. This can represent heartbreak. This can represent, something negative, something that you feel is negative for yourself, but this can also represent you doing this to someone else. This could represent you hurting someone else's feelings. Maybe you broke someone's heart. Okay. But when you see this, you have to really figure out, okay, how can I use this emotional distress that I'm going through to better myself, to further myself? How do I let go of the pain? How do I figure out what this pain is trying to tell me? But this is not a negative card. If this comes up for you, then yeah, you really need to take a little bit of a introspection into what is going on in your life right now, into why you're feeling so emotional, and then do something about it. All right. Next card that we have, Five of Pentacles. So this card, I noticed when I'll put this card in the reading, the Five of Pentacles, and they'll see this card, they'll be, it's just like sadness. I feel like it's sadness. This is a card when you're feeling like you wanted to turn to someone else for help and they turn their back on you. This is a card where, you're going through hard times. This card does represent going through hard times. But you know what? Recently, I realized this card does represent also. This gives me an insight. Like today, this card came up for someone. And it gave me an insight where you're not taking care of yourself. You're not taking care of your mental health. You're feeling run down and tired. You're feeling broken. You're not taking care of yourself. That is something that you can get from this card. You're not taking care of your money. But this is not a bad card either. None of these cards are bad. Okay, maybe you're struggling to make ends meet. Maybe, that type of thing. But this card gives us insight too, because this card is showing me that this period that you're going through is behind you also. Selena, leave it alone, please. My daughter, as usual. But this card represents an ending to hardship as well. While it may represent that you're currently going through something. Can I have it? Can I have that, please? Okay. Selena, can I have that, please? Thank you. This card does represent going through a hardship. Can I have it, please? Can I have it? You looking at me like that? Come on. Come on. You running from me? That's fine. You dropped it, though. This does represent going through hard times, but it does represent a transition, and maybe you're ready to let the hard times go. Next up, we have the Seven of Swords. A lot of people, when they see this, and I will be real with you guys, when I first started reading cards and I saw this, I did take it at face value, and I'm like, oh, boo, you getting cheated on. From face value, we do think of this as a card that's saying, oh, we're about to be cheated on. Oh, we're about to be, betrayed. We're about to do this, we're about to do that. And this week, that I have understood that it's not just that. This card does represent someone maybe betraying your trust, someone lying to you. I'm watching you, little girl. This does represent someone sneaking around behind you, but it doesn't always represent someone else. This could represent you. This could represent you, wanting to be independent, taking your shit and leaving, sneaking away because you think that's the only way that you can get it done. This card also represents wanting to be alone, not wanting to be around other people, not wanting to deal with other people. This could be like, I don't need your help. I'm taking my shit and I don't need your help. You're a lone wolf. You're doing things on your own. This could represent that as well. This can also represent, hiding from the truth, procrastination. This represents that, but this does not always represent you're about to get cheated on. I want you to know that. Next card we have is the Nine of Swords. And I know, and a lot of the most scariest cards have to do with the swords. I'm realizing that. Only one card is a Pentacles. A lot of the scary cards are swords. And the thing about it is, swords is your mind. Swords is, those thoughts. And once we learn how to control those, well, not control, but, realize the thoughts come and go, it makes life a lot easier. But the Nine of Swords, this is worry. These are thoughts that keep you up at night, sleepless nights, worry, things like that. Okay? And yes, it may be scary, but listen, you have to deal with it. This is refusing to forgive yourself for some shit you did. This is worrying about the future, which doesn't help none. This is also doubting that all will go well. Maybe you set an intention, then right afterwards, you're like, oh, but will it really happen? This is also denying that you did your best. This is being hard on yourself, focusing on your sins, focusing on the bad. This is what this card represents. But that does not mean that it is a bad card. This is just an insight on what you need to stop doing. You need to stop judging yourself. That's what these cards represent. Okay. Maybe you reached your limit. You're done. Okay, maybe you want to cry. This card could represent you want to cry. You just want to cry. Let it out. Get the emotion out, okay? But it's not a bad card. The last card, and I couldn't wait to talk about this one, our dear Ten of Swords. I feel like when people see this card, you know, it's like, oh, I don't know what that noise was, but you all get the picture. When the Ten of Swords comes up, you think that like you're gonna die or someone's gonna stab you in the back, you know? But this does not realize this. That doesn't mean that. It means, you know, bottoming out. And sometimes bottoming out is the best, because if you bottom out, it means you have to start over and you have to start somewhere else and you have to give up this situation. That is what this card, give it the fuck up. Give it up. But it's not bad. You see the swords in their back and you think that that's bad, okay? But the situation is dead, is done, is over. You can break ties with these people that are talking shit about you because it's been brought to your attention, okay? So this represents self-pity. Maybe you're pitying yourself. Why did this have to happen to me? No, fuck that. It represents, you know, feeling powerless. You had no power against the swords. Maybe you didn't see the swords coming. Okay, but you see it now. All right. This represents, you know, things can get worse. Things can get worse. They're at the worst that it is. But this is a card that when people see it, they're like, oh no. This means you're about to realize some shit. You're about to, you know, your eyes are about to be open. You're about to be able to let something go. Okay, a lot of people see this. I think this is like a card that's going to bring you misfortune. That is terrible. But this sometimes this means that you're being a little bit dramatic. The troubles are not as bad as it seems. This makes me think of a child. You know, when a kid is like going through a temper tantrum, they fall on the floor like, oh, that's what this is. Maybe it's not so bad because you see the horizon where the sky is yellow. It's showing you that there's possibilities. There's amazing things here, but you're focused so much on, you know, the bad. You're focusing so much on your problems and you're being quite excessive. And this card could represent stop, okay? But this is not a bad card. This has never been a bad card. None of these cards are bad. Get that idea out your head, all right? Bye.